I have learned this lesson in life practically myself, that just because somebody was wronged or somebody was poor, does not mean that they were righteous, by the way, all right? I will quickly tell you this story. I met this girl in Canada a number of years ago. I was just telling my niece the story of that the other day, that it had such an effect on me. And so it's a long story, but in a lump sum, she was telling me her story, how she was lamenting that she was not able to marry. And she was Indian background and was a cleaning lady in a hotel. And I was working for airlines at that time, and I was traveling, and she saw me, and because of your face, right, they always are intrigued, and she wanted to talk about this. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, maybe next year I will go back to India because my auntie is trying to arrange for me to marry there. And she had been out for 8 to 10 years out of India, never gone back to India, and she was settled in Canada. And she goes, I'm going to go back, and maybe she is arranging a marriage for me. But, you know, I mean, yeah, because nothing is happening here. And so I asked her, and I said, I mean, I know their mind and thought process, but I pretended to be innocent. And I said, why don't you marry somebody here? Why do you have to run back to India to get an arranged marriage? Why don't you pick somebody here in Canada and marry? And she goes, she was so surprised, and she goes, there is nobody here. She literally said that. She said, there is nobody here. And I was like, what's the population of Canada? And she goes, oh, that. I mean, those are not our people, you know, you can't, I mean, you can't, you know, you can't. And I was like, you can't what? And she goes, well, you know, last year I almost came close and I almost got married, but we learned in time, you know, we just got robbed by this person almost. My whole life would have been ruined if that happened, but it got caught right before, and I was saved. And I was like, saved from what? And she said, this man who, you know, who came and he asked for my hand, he came to our family and everybody liked him and everything. And, you know, everything was good. And he said he was one of us, but he wasn't one of us. And we just learned a day before almost I was getting married that he wasn't one of us. And, you know, I was saved. And I was like, so what was he? And I'm thinking in my head that, you know, how the Asian people feel. I was like, okay, maybe it was a white man or whatever. And, you know, I was like, what was he? She goes, you know, he was a construction worker. He was such a lowest cost, and he was asking to marry me. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, okay, so what is your caste? And she goes, we are Darzi. Darzi are the cloth makers, okay, the source. I was like, so Darzis are higher than construction workers, mistries? And she goes, of course, Baji. I mean, you know, he's so much lower than us, and he came and he pretended that he was this, and I would have been married the next day if he didn't catch it in time. So, and I'm just, since I was 4 years old, I'm against these things, by the way, because you see that in Asian cultures, all right? Here we have racist, color race issues. There they have class issues, yeah? So, and this caste system issue. So so immediately I said to her, and I said, you know, I'm a Rajput, you know, that is the highest caste in India after Brahmins, right? I was like, I'm a Rajput. So if my brother, which I don't have, and I said, if my brother would have, you know, come for your hand, and he said, you know, that, you know, he wanted to marry you, and my mother would have said, how dare you, you're Rajput here, and this you're wanting to marry a Darzi, you know, stuff. What would you say to that? In 1 minute, the sentence was, oh my God, you know, Baji, that would be so wrong. Because, you know, why would you come between love and say, you know, that, oh my God, these things shouldn't matter, right? The Quran has this sentence over and over again. We wrong them not, but they wrong themselves, right? So now sitting in our homes, when you think that this little girl is, you know, suffering, and she's poor, and she's cleaning the hotels, and she's, you know, an immigrant, and she's there, and she had all these other problems, and then some other stuff happens to you, you will consider that a poor innocent girl who got robbed out of whatever, and wrong had happened to her in society. No, but this poor girl was as wrong as anybody else, right? Just because she was poor, or she was an immigrant, or she was brown, does not make her wrongness any less. Yeah. So for me, this thing has taught me so much. Like the incident you're bringing, yes, at a justice level, yes, but as a judgment level, if that guy was innocent human being or not, that's a whole different ballgame. Did he hate somebody else who was not following his religion? Was he willing to kill somebody who was not following the religion of his stuff? Then there is no difference. It's just who got first, right? So always remember that. I was like, my mouth dropped out of that story. But that's how we are. So, and I've seen that all the way up and all the way down, okay, at the social ladder of humanity. People are unjust to whoever is next to them. And so just because they're poor or they're under, some underprivilege or whatever, does not, in the sight of God, justice does not mean that you have money or you don't have money. Yeah. In the sight of God, all men meaning humanity is equal, and only the closest one is the one who is righteous, wherever you're at. And societies are not righteous at large, from top to bottom.